informative, and educational, inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. This show is brought to you by the Breeders' Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl.
As a member, I'll provide you a roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. Starting with a cock from one breeder and a hen from another breeder, no problem. We can help you to turn your flock of hybrid crosses or mongrels into a pure family or strain, and show you how to continually improve that strain each generation. We'll start by showing you how to select your seed fowl and how to turn that seed fowl into a high-quality foundation strain. Our proven breeding programs and specialty courses are designed to take you step by step through the breeding process. And best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders' Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
Life is like a pen of crosses. You never know what you're going to get.
Okay, for all you Star Wars fans out there, may the 4th be with you. Today's May 4th, 2023, and today's my grandson's birthday as well. So happy birthday, Peter. Hope he's having a great birthday. I'm Kenny Triano, founder of the Breeders' Academy, and I'm here with my co-host, Frank Bradley. What's going on?
Loving this weather, buddy. It's been beautiful today. I wish we'd have a month, 2 months of this, but I know it won't. You know, rain's not too far behind, but man, today made up for it. It was just beautiful.
It's funny how you talk about so much rain, you know, and we're usually in May, it starts to warm up and everything. Today it rained. One day we got it pretty hard, and then it started clearing up. It's actually starting to look pretty good now. So, but as you can see, Nancy's playing hooky again. We're going to give her one more week off. Whoop, I hit the button. Sorry about that. I'm giving her one more week off. She should be back here next week to terrorize us and make our life difficult, which she's
ask those hard questions.
Good at.
He is the master.
Yeah. 2 more weeks, Frank. You'll be here. You and Amanda.
Yeah, buddy. It doesn't seem like, you know, when we first made this up, it seemed so far off. And Amanda was telling me that this morning and said, you know, we're just about ready to go that way. And I was like, daggone it, this went by so fast. I figured it would drag on, but it went by really, really fast. And we're excited to get out there.
Yeah, we're looking forward. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to go there in September and meet with you again and meet with some of the members over there.
It'll be fun.
For our members, we just posted the next master's class video, which is on the practice of back crossing. And next week, I don't want to say what we're going to do next week. It's going to be, what I want to know is, how do the breeders feel about how fast the master's class videos are coming out now? You know, because we're doing them a lot faster than we used to. And so they should be really happy with that.
Yeah. Well, not only that, they get to set in on them. So that, you know, that's a double whammy plus there, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pretty soon, May 25th, we're going to have Dr. Gallardo coming on again to talk about Merrick's. And right now, I think he's in Africa. But he'll be back soon, and we'll be having him back on the show. We're also having, matter of fact, I did one recording with Tony Civil on the Standard. He's coming on tomorrow again. They're not going to be live, but once I get a number of these, I'll have them all edited, and we'll start putting them on. He's going to be covering every variety of American games that exist. So we'll be doing those like once a week, and pretty soon I'll have them out for you. Pretty soon also, we're going to have Brian Reeder come on and talk to us about genetics as far as the plumage color of genetics. And that'll be good. That'll be for our members as well. And then as well, also, we're going to have Grant Brereton come on, and he'll be talking about it, genetics as well, when it comes to the color of plumage. So it's going to really be nice to get both perspectives. And I think the members are going to really enjoy the information that they're going to provide. For our members or former members, stay tuned. We're going to be opening the website here for former members. I'm always looking forward to, I'm always look for ways to not only take care of my members, but to help my former members get back in. It seems like a few times a month I get an old member saying, hey, how can I get back in? I do everything I can to get you in. But we are going to be offering a new, we're going to be having a new offer for new members. So stay tuned for that. And I think they're going to enjoy a lot of the new material that's on the website now, such as the Masters Class videos. There's a lot of old members that, they weren't, when they left, that's about when we started doing the videos. And so that's going to be new for them. We've done a lot of work to the Founders Program. And we also have the live Q&A that we do for the members. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter. Go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up. There you're going to get a lot of new bonus material, free tips, free ebooks, such as how to select your brood fowl, 5 steps to purifying the bloodline, and many more. You're also going to get a lot of notifications and announcements, such as the ones we gave today. And we've provided a lot of new opportunities for new subscribers. So there we go. Anything you want to say before we get started, Frank?
I'm ready, buddy.
Okay.
Ready.
If you see any good comments or good questions from the chat, just put them up and we'll take care of them. Today's going to be a fun one. It's funny because there was a time when people would call and say, hey, I got a sick chicken, or I have this and that. And my first response was always to cull it. And Nancy would say, you can't tell everybody to cull their chickens. You know what I mean? It's always your go-to. You can't tell everybody. Not everybody's going to really enjoy that. They're going to be pretty upset about that. But it is really my go-to when it comes to how to take care of chickens that are sick and have faults. So I think this is going to be a really important topic. I think we've covered culling, throughout a lot of our shows, but to actually make a show out of it, I don't know if we've done that yet. Have we?
I don't think so. We brought it up in part. Excuse me. We've had segments, but not a show.
Yeah. So we've covered the topic, but not like this. But, I was thinking about the other day that culling, I think, is one of the greatest tools we have as breeders. But Frank, it's one of the most controversial ones too.
Yes, it is. And the controversial part is what gets everyone, because there's a purpose for every bird on a lot of breeders' yards. Regardless of what it looks like, they think because that bird's there, they have to breed it on something, because of the name, because of who bred it, or, a lot of wives' tales, those superstition stuff goes into that. But a lot of times people have a hard time culling. At one time I had problems with culling, and when I was younger, I didn't have a problem with it. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I'm done with it. Another day, and every time I would go feed, I'd be looking for another one to cull. But later on in life, just be honest with it, I started getting a little soft-hearted, and it was hard for me there for a little bit. But I looked at it, Kenny, and I said, "Are you going to be a serious breeder, or are you not going to be a serious breeder? Which is it going to be? If you're going to be a serious breeder, you need to cull the way you need to cull." So anytime, and I'm learning Amanda too. She's starting to help me a whole lot more. I couldn't do it without her. But she's starting to notice stuff. She'll find something on a chicken and she'll say, "Come here,
Yeah.
take a look at this."
Oh, yeah.
So 4 eyes is better than 2 any day. But you're right. A lot of times it's controversial that a lot of people, they even see, I'm not getting a cull on that bird. I can get 30, 40, 50, $100 out of that bird. So I think that those right there in a little wrapped up ball is the main concerns of not wanting to cull as you should.
I don't know of anybody who culls harder than me, and but I don't enjoy it. And there's a lot of people. I can't think of anybody who does enjoy culling.
No.
It's just if you're going to breed chickens, you want to improve and make a family or create a strain, you gotta get used to it. It's never going to be fun, but it has to be done. Has to be done. So
it's a necessity. It's a necessity, really.
But I think I think people know that they do need to do it, but I don't think they know what to cull, when to cull, or what they should cull. And we're going to be talking about that today. But just to show evidence of this, just go look on anybody's farm, especially my members who know, they understand some of the programs and courses that are in the website, such as the defect and disqualification course, the confirmation course. I'm willing to bet that most of these guys on the Breeders' Academy can go on these farms, so-called big-time farms, and see a lot of culls. I'm not going to say they're all culls, but I bet they could see a lot of culls. And
I know they could. I bet my life savings on it. They could pick everyone out was there easily.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about these big farms, though, we're back into that dollar mark again. If they take, especially a bird, get it to a 2-year-old, they're not culling those birds. They're going to get something out of that bird. If it's a $5 bill, they're going to get something out of that bird.
Yeah. So it's I saw that too. Yeah, because once you're aware of what needs to be culled and what a cull actually is, you can't go on someone else's farm without seeing culls all over the place. But Derek, this is funny because Derek says I drink a 12-pack on cull day, makes it easier for me.
I don't know about a 12-pack now. I'd probably be in my brood pens culling my good chickens out of a 12-pack.
So culling is the most difficult practice we have as breeders, and it's one of the most avoided practices, which is not good. But a cull, it occurs I'm not here today. Frank and I were talking about today. I don't think he got much sleep. I didn't get much sleep. I don't know why. I was telling Frank that I went to bed a little late, but it took me 2 or 3 hours to actually fall asleep. I'm on coffee. I thought it was going to help, but I'm not focusing as well as I like. I know Frank's struggling too. So,
I told him, I said, it's going to be a rough day, buddy. It's going to be a rough day.
I mean, this is a topic that I really want to do well too. So, but I think, I guess the question is why, and I think it occurs for many reasons, but I can't think of any reason that you could justify not culling, because I know that it's the culling that either makes or breaks a strain. And so if you're not a culler, you're not willing to cull hard, you're not going to create the strain you want to create. It's just not going to turn out like you want.
Yeah. And the thing about it is you can't have a good breeding program unless you're actually culling the way you're supposed to, Kenny, because you're not going to be selecting the way you need to be. If you're keeping all these culls, I promise you, if you keep inadequate birds, whether it be defects, sickness, or whatever, and one of those slips in, and especially you've got some years up on building a family or strain, it could really, really destroy everything that you worked for. So not having them on your place is a good indication they're not going to mess anything up for you.
Yeah, we say it all the time, and I can't remember if Tony came up with it or I came up with it, because Tony and I used to talk about a lot that you would see this one bird on your farm and it would be one of those that would catch your attention. It would be one of the birds you fed first, but it would be on your mind the whole time you're feeding. And then as soon as you cull it, the whole yard looks like, rainbows and flowers and, all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, it just, that one bird really takes it changes the way the yard looks. And I always say it too, that it's a lot of times it's the one, like when you bring people on your farm to look at your birds, it's the one that gets their attention the most. So that's their first impression of your birds. Even though you got good birds, they're going to think about that one bird. Why is he holding on to that? You know, and it's the one they take with them when they leave your farm. That's the one bird that doesn't leave their mind.
Yeah, or they've got that one particular bird they just can't cull that they're constantly pumping medications into. That's the one that I can't see right there. If that's all you got, then you got to do what you got to do, okay? But if you've got a already strained, I just don't see breeding birds of that stature because, you know, like we say, Kenny, it's a weakness. It's worse than a defect, the way I look at it. And I think you do too.
Yeah.
We always say without confirmation and help, you've got nothing.
Yeah.
So I just never understood the part of the disease part, just constantly pumping antibiotics in them. You know, some of us back in our younger years, we thought that was the way that it was done. Chickens get sick, you give them medicine to help them, but there's a better way from that. And culling is the very best way to get rid of the disease and the sickness.
Yeah, just I don't watch a lot of stuff on the internet these days. I don't have time for that. I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos these days too. But when I'd go on there, I'd always see somebody, you know, talking about, I mean, they're basically normalizing the use of antibiotics and medications, thinking that this is what you need to do. And if, you know, and it just drives me crazy, because if they only understood that if they got away from the medications, bred towards resistance, they'd have a much better yard in the long run. I understand why peddlers do it, because they're always bringing in new birds. They're always crossing birds. They're always bringing new birds to cross to the birds they already have. And if they didn't medicate, they wouldn't have anything ever, because they don't keep a closed yard. They're not interested in creating a strain. David has it here. It can be difficult at first, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. I promise.
Yeah, it's like anything else. It's like anything else. You set your mind to it, and you dedicate yourself to it, and it does. David's right. It gets much easier to where you do it and you don't even think of it. And now I can walk out on the yard, and if I've got a bird that's not up to par, he's not acting right, something off with him, especially a defect, I cull him, and I don't think about it again. I'm done.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like a release. It's like that bird's a cloud over your shoulder, but once you cull it, your mind just says, "Okay, it's done. It's a done deal." You kind of forget about it and you go on, and then it's, you know, you don't think about it again after that. I can only think of one bird I culled that, not that I wished I didn't, but it was so nice a bird, but he had duck toe. Other than that, he was perfect in every way. And to this day, that bird haunts me only because it's one of the best birds to this day that I think I've ever had. If he didn't have that duck toe, it still drives me crazy to this day. But other than that, once I make my mind up to cull something, I cull it. Then it's a done deal. I don't think about it. So Frank, what are culls? What are a culls?
Oh, wow. How much time you got?
Well, I've got 3 bullet points, but you can haul butt on yours.
Anything substandard, defects, sickness, anything that musters up. Here's the thing. This is how I look at a cull. My finished product in my breeding program, if it is under that, that's a cull to me. You don't breed anything under than what you've already got. You breed your best birds. You don't breed your substandard birds ever.
Right.
So I look at all those as a cull.
Well, it's like people, like we say all the time, that it's not that they're trying to breed their substandard birds, that they just have birds on the farm and they think they have to breed all of them, you know, instead of breeding to the handful that actually will take your strain to the next level. But I was thinking about it when I was saying, okay, what is a cull? We can go into, and we'll talk about some of the things that make up a cull, but I wanted to sum it up. And so I was thinking, any bird that shows a departure from health, we talked about that. They got to be healthy and vigorous. Any bird that lacks the proper breed characteristics. So when we say They can't be substandard. That just means that they don't match their breed. They don't represent their breed real well. They don't look like, for us, we like American games. They don't look like American games. And any bird that has faults that could change the integrity of the strain. So we're talking about defects and disqualifications, because those are traits that if you breed to within a certain amount of time, or a certain amount of generations, breeding to these defects without really understanding what you're doing, you can destroy the strain. I've seen it so many times go on farms, and they say, "Hey, can you help me set up my brood pen?" I look them around. I say, "Oh, you might want to get rid of this one, duck toe. Oh, that one has it too. Oh, shoot." Start looking around. They all had duck toe, and when they all have duck toe, you're going to produce more duck toe. And I tried real hard to find birds that didn't have duck toe so you could move forward. And I was like, man, there's a reason why they're all duck toe, because you've been breeding the duck toe, and I'm not helping you at all by picking you 2 birds with duck toe. So I had to tell him he had to start all over. And I've seen farms that had, squirrel tail so bad. And we say squirrel tail is one of those traits that you can improve over time by breeding to the best intensity. But this guy had it so bad. It was in the cocks. It was in the hens. It was even on the hens. Frank showed me a picture the other day. I should have grabbed it and put it on here.
Oh, I still got it.
Even the hen had the duck toe so much that was almost to the head. And when the hen has it that bad, you know how bad it is. Well, this guy's farm was the same way. Every bird had duck toe that was actually touching the head. Even the hens had it. And I just couldn't, I didn't know how to fix that when it's that bad. And you can get like that when you don't understand what you're looking for, or what you should be breeding for. So
here's the thing, Kenny. I think a lot of the problem is they bred the birds for, 3 or 4 generations, and what they're not aware of the defects, but the whole time they're breeding these birds, they're intensifying those traits or those defects. Okay. And a lot of them just has no idea on this. I'll bet you those guys had no idea that those were defects on those birds.
No, they didn't.
Or
had no idea.
Had no idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of times it's just not knowing. They haven't educated themselves as far as to see what defects are. But you could take one of the members on that farm and blindfold them and spin them around, and it's probably still find them.
Yeah, it's like duck toe. The guy with duck toe had no clue that he had duck toe, or that it was an issue. Okay. The squirrel tail, that guy was actually told by his so-called mentors that was a good trait, that it's a strong trait, that's what you want. And when I explained to him why, he was pretty depressed, and showed him why too. So
you ruined his day.
Yeah, it really did. I felt bad too, Okay, Frank. So what is the function of culling?
Well, mine can be pretty barbaric sometimes, but it gets done. I even start with the baby chicks. I mean, you have to start somewhere, but you have to do what you got to do in order to get it. Me and Kenny was talking about in the green room. I've got a burn pit that when I cull them, I burn them. I get rid of them. Now, Kenny's in a little bit different spot there. He can't, maybe really go out and burn.
No, I don't think I'll have a barbecue and want to come over and eat it.
I was telling Kenny, I said, at first you got the feather smell, but after that feather smell goes by, then you've got to be, oh, are you barbecuing? Oh God, that smells so good. It smells really good. But there's only one way of culling, and that's, to me, Kenny, that's ending that bird's life and doing away with it. At one time I was giving mine away to keep from having to cull them. And I thought, I'm not doing anybody any favors by giving those culls away.
No,
even to the kids, I'm not doing anybody any favors. So they don't ever leave my farm now. I get rid of them. They go in the pit.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But when you give out a cull, that's going to come back to bite you in a bad way, because
it will.
That person is going to tell others that they got this bird from Kenny Troiano. Okay, and I've had people do that. Hey, do you have any culls you want to sell real cheap? I'll say, I don't have any birds for sale. Well, I'll even take your culls. Well, I would never let a bird like that leave my farm, because that would ruin my reputation, for one thing. So, but when I look at the function of culling, I look at it 2 ways. Okay. if I look at culling as a function, what it does is it maintains the strain. So anytime you're culling birds and getting rid of the weakest link, you're raising the quality of your strain overall. So I look at it as culling is to maintain the strain while selection progresses the strain. So I'm culling the inferior birds and I'm selecting the superior birds and then breeding to those and improving my strain as I go. And then anything in between that aren't exactly culls, but they're not the ones I use to improve my strain. Those are the ones I don't sell birds anymore, but those are the ones I would sell or give away, because they're still good birds. It's just that, I have better birds, that are going to actually improve my strain. So, but the thing is you can't even begin the selection process until you cull first anyways. So I always tell people, go through your yard. Don't start selecting birds yet. Go through your yard and start culling anything that's sick or was sick, anything with defects or disqualifications, anything that doesn't represent its breed. And then once you get rid of all those inferior birds, then you can start the selection process, which makes it a lot easier.
Well, you said it though, Kenny. You cannot start selection until all those inadequate birds are off your property and gone. But the thing about it is, with that, you mentioned giving other people your culls, and one reason I stopped doing this is I don't care how long you've had a family, you're going to get a cull from time to time. All your birds is not going to be perfect. They're going, they can be anything. It can be environment. It can be genetic. It could be basically anything. But I give a bird to a guy, and he had it at his home, and another breeder walked up and looked at it and said, "What are you doing with that bird? Where'd you get that at?" Well, I got Frank give that to me. Well, what in the world is he doing, with something like that,
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, it'll never happen again. It kind of made me feel bad inside because of that,
Mm-hmm.
So that stopped me right there for me. I said, they'll never be. And then I had another guy that actually was complaining about it after that I give it to him, didn't even charge him for it, give it to him. And that's all he done was complain about it. His tail was off just a little bit to one side. And he complained. And I said, I'm done giving away culls after this. No more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was easy for me. Well, I'll say it was easy, but it was, it made it more of a prerequisite, a requirement for me to early on to get rid of my culls and to not give them out, not sell them, not let them leave my farm, is because early on when I started writing for the magazines, when I was working with Tony, one of the first articles I wrote was on defects and disqualifications and confirmation of body. So the last thing I was going to do is let an inferior bird get off my farm when I'm supposed to be the confirmation guy. So it made me because of the work I was doing, it made me not only be a better breeder, but it made me, it put my foot to the stone, I guess you could say, to make sure that the birds that left my farm were good, because I didn't want a bad reputation. So I was never
practice what you preach.
Yeah. I never wanted that to
That's understandable.
So when we look at what to cull, we were talking about a second ago, obviously the sick birds. So anything that's sick should be culled. All the substandard birds and all the defective birds, those should all be culled. But understanding what to cull is one thing, but understanding what those culls actually are is another. Because when we're looking at defects, some defects are culled differently. So if we look at monogenic traits, which are basically one gene, one trait, qualitative traits or qualitative inheritance, those they either have it or they don't, but it could be hidden. So anytime anything's expressing those kind of traits, like duck toe, my mind's going blank right now. Sunken eye, I can think of there's all kinds of them. We've got like 88 different defects on the website, but those should be culled when you see them. But there's some that are like polygenic traits, like crooked breastbone, squirrel tail. Those are probably the most common. Those, I mean, if you have good birds that don't have those traits or those defects, then you cull the ones that show it. But if that's all you have, then polygenic traits are selected differently in that if you select for the highest intensity or the best intensity, the birds that are the best and closest to where they should be, those are the ones you breed to, and little by little you get there. So it's understanding not just what to cull, what the defects are, but which ones to cull and how to breed them differently and how to get there. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying at this point. So
Oh yeah, you're on it. You're on
okay.
it. You're doing fine.
I start feeling like
You're
I'm
doing
starting
fine.
to ramble and saying the same thing over again. It's like I want more.
No. Well, we've got to cross some of these over. You know, the path crossed all over. It's like a road map when
Yeah.
it comes to culling.
So basically, it's not just knowing what to cull, but how to cull, which ones to cull, which ones that need to be culled right away, and then which ones can be bred out of it. So that's the key. But I always say, if you have good birds, but you see some culls on your yard, no matter what it is, get rid of the culls and go with the good birds.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've said it a million times, Kenny. Really, a cull doesn't have to on a good breeder's yard. A cull doesn't have to have anything wrong with it. It's just inadequate to what you already have. You're not going to breed it. So a cull can actually be, in the eyes of someone else, a really nice bird.
Yeah, that's true. That's what I was saying a second ago, is that, you know, anything is defective, of course, or anything sick, you should cull that. You never want to get that out. But from that, the rest of the birds, that's when you start your selection process. So then you select the birds. We always say the 10% rule. You want to get them down to the top 10%. And it's from there you notice the standouts. Those are the ones you're going to breed to and improve your strain. And then whatever's left is like what Frank said, is usually pretty decent birds. You know what I mean? That would make great birds for other people to create strain from. There's no problem with that. So, but just knowing what they are is the trick. So Frank, when do you cull?
Oh goodness, what a list. As soon as I see what we've been talking about, a defect, inadequate bird, anything that would hurt genetically, anything that would hurt health wise, just anything that we're not going to tolerate, basically, in a breeding program. And once again, I'll go back and I'll say this: our breeding program is only good as the birds that we select and the birds we cull.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. So basically, you want to cull for the whole, the entire life of the bird. And like Frank was saying earlier, I'll start with the eggs. Those chickens will be gathering eggs for hatching, but I'll go in there every few days, look them over, get rid of anything that doesn't look right, whether they're misshapen or cracked or whatever it may be, or miscolored or anything that doesn't look right. Those eggs come out. And so I'll start with the eggs. And then as the chicks hatch, because I take them from the brood pens, they hatch their eggs in there. And then I go in there, get the hen out of there, take the chicks, put them in a bucket, go take them over to the broody houses. And then I look over the chicks real good as I'm putting them in the broody houses. I look them over real good, make sure there's no defects or any weak ones or whatever I notice right off the bat. And then I put them in there. I put the hen in there. So it's like, and then once they get to about 6 weeks old, 6 to 8 weeks old, when I take the hen out and I move them from the broody house into the grow out pens, I'm picking them up again. I'm not just grabbing them and throwing them in the pens. I'm looking them over really good. So anytime I'm picking up birds, handling them, moving them, I'm always looking them over really good and seeing anything that I need to cull. Feed's too expensive to hold on to birds that you shouldn't be holding on to. And anytime you're picking up, handling them, or moving them, that's the best time to look them over.
That's 100%, Kenny. A lot of times when I go to mark mine, after they're hatched, that's the time I take each individual one when I've got it in my hand, and I go over it with a fine tooth comb. And if I find something wrong, I cull it right then and there. And if Amanda's around with the chicks, now if she's around with the adult birds, she's fine. She's okay when I'm culling birds. But now when I cull chicks, I send her away. She doesn't handle the chicks as easy.
Yeah. And sometimes the chick can be healthy. It doesn't exactly show a defect, but it's substandard in that it doesn't match where you're going with the strain. Here's a good example of it too. Like if you're trying to create a red family and you want to go towards the dark red, but they're throwing those buff chicks from time to time, Those
You have
little
to.
yellowish buff chicks are the ones that need to go. And if you got somebody you can give them to or sell them to because they're still pretty good chickens, then great. But I hate to say it, that sometimes those are the ones that need to be culled because
It is.
they're just gonna take up feed. You're not gonna breed to them anyways. If you bred to them, they're gonna take your family in the wrong direction. And in the meantime, because of that soft heart, you're just putting feed into them, and you're gonna cull them someday. It's just the way it is.
After you got a fortune in them,
Yeah, after you
you're
got
going to cull them.
because you didn't want to do it when they were younger.
Yeah.
It just
And it's easier.
it's like
It's
a band
easier to do it.
off.
Yeah. I found out though, Kenny, as soon as the culling thought enters your head, do it right then and there. Don't put it off. Don't say I'll do it tomorrow. Don't say I'll do it an hour from now. As soon as that thought cull goes in your head, get the chicken, cull it, and I promise you, you'll be much, much happier in the long run.
Yeah.
5 minutes after you cull it, you'll be better, I promise.
Because a lot of your selection when you're trying to shape a family is done by the chicks that you keep, and you cull like my black pearls. I started with a black breasted, black red cock, bred my Maximus hens, which are black breasted reds, partridge bred, into them. And at first I was getting like 50-50. I'd get like, half of them were black, half of them were partridge chipmunk color. And so I just get rid of the chipmunk chicks and keep the black and keep moving forward to the point when they started really taking shape just from that. And anytime I get any chipmunk chicks at all, which I don't get as many anymore. Matter of fact, a lot of my hens don't pass chipmunk chicks at all anymore. Then I would get rid of those because like I said, one of the fastest way to shape your family is starting with the selection and the culling of your chicks.
And we're speaking about culling, but myself and others, I know when we cull our, say, the younger pullets or younger stags that we need, we eat them. And the reason I say that, I see them talking about it in the comments, but we got one of those little rotisserie ovens, and you can take those pullets about 3 months old, man, a little lemon, a pepper. They're really, really good on that right there. So, why not take advantage of your culls? But here's the thing. I get a kick out of this. You can tell the guys that use medication here in this area because a lot of people will eat their chickens, their culls, if it's healthy. And you'll say, do you eat your pullets? Do you eat your child? No, I do not eat them. Oh, okay. You're using medications then, big boy.
Yeah.
It will tell on them every time. Every time it will tell on them.
Yeah. I heard the other day somebody promoting the worming of baby chicks still blows my mind.
Ooh.
Crazy. They think the baby chicks have worms like that,
A baby chick
out of the egg, baby chicks, not 6 or 8 weeks old, out of the egg.
And I don't understand that. A baby chick has to be on the ground or around chickens that's expelling, the eggs for them to pick back up. And even if a chick gets them, they've got to be 8 to 10 weeks old, minimum. If not older.
I need to take that clip that Dr. Gallardo did on worming and worming baby chicks and how that's not possible. Make a little segment out of that and put it on YouTube and let people watch that because sometimes common sense just leaves you, it's just not there with people.
Well, the thing about it is science and the study of science and these statistics don't lie. It's what it is. And if that would be true, then we would have articles, we would have tests that were done on them that was stated that they could get worms in the egg and come straight out. Now, did they see something that looked like a worm? They may have. Was it a worm?
No, they could have been seeing, but he said it wasn't worms. And even getting a worm in the egg, not in the baby chick. Let's say a worm just showed up in the egg. The anatomy doesn't really allow that either. And for a baby chick to actually develop worms in its intestines, that's crazy talk. It just it can't happen.
It's not possible.
No, it's not possible.
It's not possible.
No.
Without them being, and they cannot get them from the mother through the egg that way.
No,
it's impossible.
No.
Yeah, I could promise you that.
I'm not sure how I went down that tangent. It just popped in my head. I think we were talking about culling baby chicks and diseases. Oh, it was medications, giving medications, worming baby.
Medications. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this: the idea of worming baby chicks right out of the egg. Can you imagine what you're doing to their digestive system and
Their organs, their liver, their kidneys.
yeah.
It would be. Let me tell you, you want to cull a bunch of chicks, give them some B12 or vitamin K, just a little bit when they're babies, and watch what happens for a couple of days. They'll spray blood every which way. It just breaks down their whole system. The same way, could you imagine? And that's a vitamin. Could you imagine what a wormer would do to them?
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Or people giving them LS50 straight out of the egg as soon as they hatch. The first drink of water they get is antibiotics.
Yeah, because Dr. Gallardo says you cannot give antibiotics to a chicken to prevent disease. It doesn't work like that. Antibiotics works on the disease.
It's still going to get it
there, So giving baby chicks antibiotics doesn't make sense to me.
A lot of people think that though, Kenny.
A
lot of people think that it keeps them from getting sick.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep them from getting sick. It just hides the symptoms. But they're still carrying the disease.
Well, it won't, like, let's say you think a storm's coming and you think it's by giving them antibiotics, you're going to prevent the disease. They already are sick. If they're showing disease, they are already sick. You know what I mean? It's not going to prevent them getting sick.
You're right.
Lewis has a really interesting perception here. I always wonder if it's a sin to cull chickens that are not sick. And I totally understand that. And I understand how he feels like that. But here's how you get past that. You eat them. You know what I mean? You butcher for the dinner table,
This is what I tell people with this question, Kenny. This is what I tell people with this question. Is it a sin for a turkey to come off with 30, 40 chicks and then a cat kill them all and just leave them laying and go on about his merry day? Nature culls more than every human combined. Okay. And me and Kenny says this like it's programmed in our brains, but we need to cull. Like if we cull like Mother Nature, we wouldn't have to worry about having inadequate birds on our farm. Mother Nature is the ultimate culler.
Mother Nature wouldn't tolerate sickness, defects, anything that would make it susceptible to either their environment, the predators, or whatever. We have to cull like Mother Nature. We have to look at our birds and in some things, if they wouldn't be able to survive in the wild, like sickness is one of them. If it's not something they can cure their self from or get well on their own, or even if they get sick at all, because that creates a weakness right there, then I would cull them. So I wouldn't do anything. If Mother Nature would cull them, I'm going to cull them. Duck toe is one of them,
That's it.
Deep breast.
That's it.
That makes a chicken that can't roost properly. That he has such a deep breastbone that he can't even roost properly. Different lengths of leg, station, those kind of things make it so that it wouldn't be able to get back in, get in the trees and roost properly and be susceptible to whatever predators. I'm always looking at it like that. I'm a big Mother Nature. I'm big into evolutionary biology, what Mother Nature would do. If they can't survive on their own, I would cull them. So.
See, but I had that same frame of mind at one time, Kenny. I was like, is this morally correct? Am I doing a sin by culling these birds? But, you take one look at Mother Nature, and Mother Nature is as cruel as it can get. I mean, it's eat or be eaten, okay? And that's the way it is. It's a life cycle is what it is. And it's no different. You're getting rid of the inadequate the same way Mother Nature would get rid of the same thing, the same problem. So
yeah,
myself, we each got a different opinion, but I don't see it that way. I really don't. But I could see how you could get that because I have felt that way before.
Derek says, I watched so many videos with large breeders in the U.S. giving baby chicks shots in the back of the neck. Day-old chicks, right. By the way. No wonder so many diseases are floating around out there. I mean,
a lot of times that's Merrick's vaccine. The day-old chicks in the back of the neck.
If that's all it is, and that's fine.
Yeah.
The only problem with Merrick's is if the other chickens on your yard weren't vaccinated or weren't exposed to Merrick's, They're going to get it. Okay. So I'm not a big, I know that there's a place for vaccinations, especially if you got things in your area. But if you keep a closed yard and you select properly and breed for resistance, I don't even think a lot of times vaccinations are necessary. I don't vaccinate for anything. I don't medicate for anything. I call anything that's sick. And I hardly ever see a sick bird around here.
We talked about this last week, Kenny, about, I was doing a paper one time and I called about 8 of the bigger breeders. And I was asking them, what medications they use, what vaccines they used. And every one of them vaccinated for the same exact thing, the bigger breeders. And it was Microplasma, Coryza, Merrick's, and believe it or not, coccidiosis.
Yeah.
And me and Kenny was talking about this. And okay, some of the vaccines are non-viral. Okay, so you don't have anything to worry about. They're really a plus if you get into a tight pinch. It's really a lifesaver. But the ones that's a live virus, you take Merrick's. Okay, if you get and especially the coccidiosis, if you get those birds and you bring them to your place, you're going to lose every bird that you've got, especially with the coccidiosis. You're going to have a rough time keeping birds alive on your farm after that. So that's the reason me and Kenny, a lot of shows we're saying, ask the guys that you're getting your seed fowl or breed fowl from what they vaccinate from, because you could be taking something home with you that could really, really harm you.
Yep. Robbie's saying, hey, everyone, did I miss much? Robbie, man, you got to be on time. You miss so much. It's not even funny. This is live. This isn't going to be on later. You got to be on time and watch the whole thing. So
you're going to have to take that cap back, Kenny.
Yeah.
You're going to have to take that cap back.
Disappointing you're not on time. You got to be punctual, This is good information we're passing. I'm just hassling him.
Glad you can make it, Robbie.
I know he can handle it. So here's a question. This is when to cull. We're talking about when to cull. This is very controversial because everybody looks at it differently. Now, I'll tell you what I think. But how old is too old, Frank? What do you think?
When they've outlived their use. When you can't use them anymore, why feed them?
Okay.
That's my biggest one.
The way I look at it is when you look at the cocks, as long as he doesn't have any genetic triggers that pop up that are detrimental to the strain, which happens from time to time, and it's hard to tell as they're getting older because they do kind of change. But as long as they're fertile, I can breed a cock for a long time and get a lot out of them. And which is funny because I don't hit a lot of, like when Frank will see when he gets here, most of my pens, most of my lines, I guess you could say, are all hen lines. I got 2 cock lines. The rest are all hen lines. So I'm a big, I just like using the hens most. But the hens, I don't usually hold on to them. It used to be 6 years was my limit. Lately now it's 8. Sometimes I'll push 9. And the reason being is because when she ages, so do the eggs inside her. She is born with all the eggs inside her she'll ever lay. Thousands and thousands of eggs. I don't know how many exactly, but there's a lot of eggs in there that she'll never get around to laying. But she basically comes out of the shell with those eggs already in her. And so she's not producing new eggs like cocks produce new sperm. It doesn't happen like that. So when she reaches 7, 8, 9 years old, those eggs are 7, 8, 9 years old as well. So a lot of times when you have an older hen, and sometimes mitochondrial helps out and we'll get you through it, but there's a lot of times those hens get older, and because those eggs are older, the quality of the chick goes down. So anytime you see an older hen starting to produce chicks that are not as thrifty, they're not as healthy, they're not as active, you see a difference in the quality of the chicks that she's hatching. It's time to get rid of her. I wouldn't even raise those chicks. And usually that for most hens, that's about between 7 and 9 years old. I think you're actually making a mistake and actually taking a chance on your strain when you breed to really old hens, because eventually without you knowing it, thinking, oh, wow, she's a really good hen. She's always produced really good offspring. I know she's 10, 11, maybe 12 years old. It's one of those things that you don't realize the effects of it until later down the road, when all of a sudden the quality of your chicks, the quality of your offspring, the quality of your strain starts to diminish. And then you wonder why. And so I make it a practice to, get rid of hens in that 7, 8, 9 year mark. I'm once they reach 7, I'm keeping a pretty good eye on them. And if you start when they're 2 years old, like in a proper line breeding program, you can get what you need out of her in her reproductive lifespan, without. So I wouldn't push it farther than that when it comes to a hen.
That's if you get a good start on them. Now, don't do like I've done in the past. I'm waiting to 4 or 5 years old, and it's like, oh, you know what? I think I want to clone this hen, and then she's
already
too old to clone.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
problem.
I've done that. Yeah, I've done that before, Kenny.
So
Sure have.
I would not go to someone's farm to buy chickens, and he says, "Oh, I've got this 5-year-old or 6-year-old hen. I'll sell real cheap." Well, man, there might be a reason why he's selling that bird cheap for one thing, but especially if you expect to head a line with that hen, if she's just a seed hen, then
You're fine.
You're fine. You can get an older hen, use her as a seed hen. You're just not going to move any farther from that. She's just going to get the line started, and you'll be just fine. But if you're buying hens, I mean, the best you could do is buy like a 2-year-old hen. And I always suggest that you select them yourself. Don't have them mailed to you, so you know exactly what you're dealing with. But yeah, 2-year-old hen, she's right at the age when you can start breeding her, and she'll be really good for your breeding program.
Yeah. Well, I'd always try to do a younger cock with the older hen, vice versa. Seemed like it maybe helps out a little bit better. But you're right. I've had those hens, Kenny, when they get over some, it's really dependent on the bird itself. If they get up, 5, 6 years old, you'll notice some of the eggs are, they'll start developing, and they go awry, they go bad. And the birds, you're right, they're just not, they're not vigorous. They're not the big, fluffy, nice, healthy looking chicks that you're seeing normally. So they do go downhill over a certain point of that age.
Yeah. That's when you'll notice the hen's too old for the most part. I wouldn't take a chance. Sometimes you don't notice it, and sometimes they just don't grow and develop properly. That's another. There can be different signs or different indications that the hen's getting old. It's not always the same thing, And one of the things I look for when I'm looking at the offspring and determining the value of the hen is how active and healthy and those chicks are, and then how well they're growing, developing in the crucial months, like the second, third, fourth, and fifth months. If I'm not seeing proper growth and development, then chances are the hen is not a good brood hen. She probably don't have really great mitochondrial DNA, because all chickens have mitochondrial DNA, but it's basically passed from mother to daughter, mother to daughter, mother to daughter. The cock can't pass it. So, Frank, I always tell people the best practice, and you'll hear us say this a lot, is to hatch a lot, cull a lot. Kind of goes with what we're saying all the time, is hatch as many as you can manage and afford, and you cull all the sick, defective, and substandard birds. You're trying to always, I don't care if you're hatching 100 chicks or 1,000 chicks throughout your farm, you're always trying to weed them down till you get to that top 10%. And then it's the standouts from there that you're actually going to breed and move forward. But that's the way I look at it. Hatch a lot, cull a lot.
Yeah. You're replicating Mother Nature. That's how Mother Nature gets her standouts. That's how Mother Nature gets the smarter, the healthier, the more vigorous, whatever it may be. But the thing about it is with that, Kenny, as far as the birds itself, you can go into the woods and the birds there are just as healthy and just as vigorous as the birds that we've got that we take so good care of. Less parasites and everything. Mother Nature has a way with building her own. The way we do selective breeding, they do with just getting rid of the weakest. So by us being able to do the same thing and take those weak birds and get rid of them, any type of weakness. Now, I'm just talking about any type flaws and weakness. We can do just like Mother Nature and have the strongest, fittest, the most dominant birds that we can have just like that. And I tell you what, After listening to Tony, that gave me a different outlook on breeding as far as Mother Nature versus selective breeding. And by looking at that, it can really help you. It can really help you in your breeding as far as looking at Mother Nature.
It's funny you bring that one up, because I remember when I came up with the idea, I call it Mother Nature and the Natural Order of Selection. It's a play on words and everything, but I came up with it because Tony would say things from now and then, and bring up certain things that, breeding towards Mother Nature, or watching for this, making sure that they adapt to their environment, all that. And that's when we got in the conversation, and we did that at his house. We just got into a deep conversation for hours about, evolution, Mother Nature, how to select towards, how to select them and accordingly with that kind of thing in mind, and how you benefit by doing that. And I went back with the recorder and said, "Hey, can we do that again? So we can, relive it or try to do it again." And he says, "Sure." And it came out pretty good. I don't remember if it was better or not, but it came out really good.
The MP3 recording?
Yeah. And
that was a good one.
It was hard to hear. And I even made a show out of it, because I asked Tony, I go, "You remember that recording we did?" Because I made an article out of it. It was in the Gamecock magazine. And that was my whole intent, was to come up with a topic that I could take information from and create an article from that I think people would, get something out of. And I was really amazed how many people got back to me and said that was one of the biggest eye openers they ever had, was reading that article. So I went to Tony and says, "You remember that recording we did? I made an article." He goes, "Oh, sure." I go, "Do you mind if I, edit it, clean it up the best I can and make a show out of it?" He goes, "Yeah." And to this day, everybody, I hear all the time, that's one of everybody's favorite episodes. And I was scared to death kind of that I wasn't going to edit or clean up enough, because it was so hard to understand, because it had so much background noise.
But it was worth it.
Yeah, it was after a while, because after you listen to it for a while, you almost don't hear the background noise anymore, because you get kind of in tune with what, how it sounds and everything. But yeah, it's one of my favorites. And between, doing that recording and writing the article, that really spurred me to dig deeper into evolutionary biology, and Darwin, and all the different contributors that were involved in evolution, and how we understand evolution, and how much those same people, including others, contributed to selective breeding. And it just all came together. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing today. I wouldn't have the Breeders' Academy. I wouldn't have the Founders Program. I can tell you that. But I'm really happy when I see people embrace all that. People saying to me, "Well, I never gave evolution a thought, or it wasn't my thing, or even biology. And after listening to you and reading the stuff on the Breeders' Academy, I've dug in deeper." That kind of thing makes me feel really good that we actually accomplished something there with that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times we just don't think about putting the two together, but when you think of it in that way, the way you guys was putting it, it opens up different avenues as far as your breeding. It improves your breeding. It improves your outlook on breeding. It gives you a different, if Mother Nature can make a perfect, as perfect bird as can be made, what can we do with selective breeding? That's how I was looking at it,
Well, we're basically, with selective breeding, we're like doing, how do I say this? We're controlling the direction of the birds, whereas in the wild, Mother Nature is. So because of that, we're able to do things a lot faster. We're actually able to make progress much faster, where Mother Nature's slower. And
oh gosh,
yeah. So I'm trying to read some of these questions here. They're so long, and you guys.
That's what I was doing. I was reading them, talking to you, reading them.
I can't listen to Frank and read these huge paragraphs and then know what he said. So you guys got to show me.
A lot of them was just making a comment, pretty much. It wasn't actually a question, but there was a few of them there, pretty long. But
yeah, if I have to read,
I was reading Robbie's.
I get to half and go, okay, back to the show. So
I got to Robbie's and he was going on. I was like, what was he saying? And at the bottom he says, "I hope we can all smell sarcasm." And I was like, okay.
Okay, so Frank, most don't cull enough, nearly
No.
enough.
And the thing about it is, I ask myself that question every day, Kenny. I ask myself that question every day. Every day we go around and I feed my chickens. I ask myself that question. Am I culling enough? Am I culling the ones that I need to be? Am I selecting right? I lay in bed at night and I think these things, you know.
Yeah. Well,
It's what keeps me up at night.
I'm not worried whether I culled enough. I just need to cull them as I see them, you know. And I try to. Sometimes I wait, but I'm more thinking about when you go onto people's farms who have hundreds or thousands of chickens. I know they're not culling enough.
No, no. But now what I'm talking about though, Kenny, is, and I know you've had this happen. I think every breeder's had this happen. You keep a bird for 2 years. One day you're going around and you're feeding and you see a defect or something on that bird and you're like, where in the heck did that come from? You know, I've looked at it a million times. Now I had a light red bird, okay, and he was 15, 16 months old. And one day I was feeding and he turned around and he had a snow white wing. Just his wing was snow white. The rest of him was a light red. And I was like, how in the world did you miss that? How did you miss that? So
Yeah.
if I could miss that, what else am I missing? You know, that's what I'm thinking. If I miss one little bitty thing, what else am I missing?
Yeah, it'll be Will or me too, because I don't remember when it was. I think it was last year actually, but I was feeding the chickens. I was looking at these pullets inside this one pen, and I look down and I go, "Oh my God, she has duck foot. How did I miss that?" I mean, I'm looking at my birds and she wasn't young either. She was pretty good size. How in the heck did I miss that? I remember going in the house telling Nancy, "You won't believe this." But and sometimes I wish I didn't tell her these things, because and then she uses them against me later, you know, and I never live them down. So
Told on you.
it's like she'll go out there
That
and
sounds like Amanda.
chickens over. I go, "Leave my chickens alone." She goes, "Well, you miss them now and then." I go, "Yeah, I mean, that's what I get for telling you that, you know." So, but when I think about not culling enough, I think about the bigger farmers who have so many chickens. I just know they're not culling enough, and I know I could go on their farm and help them cull, and I could justify every bird that I cull, and I can tell them exactly what's wrong with that bird. But I think some of them are lazy, some lack the knowledge, they don't understand what to cull. Some are greedy because they think every bird on the farm has a monetary value, you know, because you go on someone's farm to buy birds and they don't know you, they're not going to help you replicate their farm. They're going to set you up either with crosses or birds that are unrelated. And if they think you're a beginner, they're going to sell you their culls. You know, there's a big
Every
business.
time.
There's a big market for culls. And a
Yeah.
lot of these beginners, I see all the time people getting stuck with these birds.
Well, the way those guys look at it, Kenny, and you know, really you have to look at it through their eyes. They put all this feeding this bird, they put all this time in water and feeding him there every day for 2 years. And then I'm going to cull him and just throw him away. I'm going to get something out of him. So somebody comes here and they question, they talk to him. They're like, oh, okay, he's just starting. He's young. You know, he's not knowing any better. It's not going to hurt him none because, you know, he's a beginner. I'll just put them off on him, you know. And that happens so often. And then a lot of times I've seen it. Guys that were supposed to be good chicken men, these big name breeders, you know, supposed to have the legendary name and this and that. I've seen so many culls sold to supposed to be good chicken men, and they would be proud of it as all could be, and they would be defective, rye-tailed, squirrel-tailed, and they'd be tickled to death with that bird, and they paid thousands of dollars for that bird and tickled to death about it, but didn't even know that it had defects or anything seriously wrong with it.
And they'll put up with it because of who they got the bird from and the name that's attached.
Exactly.
They'll think, oh, it
Looks
must be
don't matter.
okay. Yeah, looks don't matter as long as they win, all that kind of crap. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
That's
I mean,
90% of it right
that's
there.
the easy way of justifying it for them, is as long as they win, I don't care what it looks like. I don't believe they believe that. I think that's the best
That's
way
an
they
excuse.
can. Yeah, it's a excuse.
That's
Down
an
deep, I don't
excuse,
think
I
they believe
think.
that for a second, you know?
I don't either.
So the next question would be, can you cull too much?
No. Unless you're killing your good birds.
Yeah.
As long as you know to stop at your good birds, you're doing what you're supposed to do. I'll say that.
If you're culling too much, it's because you're culling the wrong birds, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't care if you cull hard enough, as long as you're getting down. If you still have a cock and hen to breed, you're good to go. If all those birds were that bad that should have been culled, cull them. As long as you have one cock and hen, then you're good to go. But if you have to cull all of them, chances are you start with some pretty bad seed fowl. So my biggest suggestion is learn how to select good birds when you're buying them. And again, that's what the Breeders' Academy teaches you, is what the proper bird looks like. It makes you aware of the defects and the disqualifications that exist, that kind of thing, so that you're getting started on the right foot. These birds are just too expensive to start with crap. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, look at the price of feed, what it is today,
Yeah.
Kenny. It's highest it's ever been in the world's existence. I mean, I was looking at the store there the other day, and just regular grains that were, say $16-17 a bag back before the pandemic are 25 and 26, 28
Yep.
dollars a bag now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So the consequences of not culling.
Oh, that's a bad one. That's a bad one.
By the way, I put this I was just sitting watching TV the other day, and I put this outline together just real quick. Anything that popped in my head, I put it down, and then I added a handful of bullet points. So I was just kind of thinking, what is it about culling that we need to understand? What we should know, how to practice it, when to cull, what to cull for. I just started putting this thing all together. But once I got it all together, I was like, yeah, this is gonna make it pretty good. But some of this is gonna be obvious, but
I've got a good response for that, Kenny.
Hmm.
You know the guy that you said you went to the two farms and they all had squirrel tail and the other one had all duck toe?
Yeah.
That's one of the consequences, because when you don't know and you're not culling the right birds, you end up with a whole farm of defective birds, because it's just going to perpetuate whatever it is they've got wrong with them. And each time you breed, you magnified it, you intensified it, right? It's just like a good trait. We want to intensify and make the good traits as intensified as we can. But if you're breeding defective birds, especially with defects, that you're doing the same to those defects as you want to do to those good traits.
You're going to look at the bird and say, oh, he has this and that. And sometimes it seems subtle and not that important, but those kind of traits are devastating to the strain overall. It's those are the kind of defects that penetrate the whole strain within a number of generations. And before you know it, you don't have any good birds. And what you thought was a nothing or a no big deal ends up being a big deal later down the road. So I would say anytime you see what we'd call like a simple recessive can be a major problem down the road. So I would say anytime you see a defect whatsoever, get to know what those defects are, first of all. And anytime you see them, get rid of them as fast as you can. I know it's painful. I know it's something you don't want to do. You hate doing it. Sometimes you got a lot of money in these things. Sometimes you've, put a lot of feed in them. They're pretty old at this point. Anytime you see a defect, I would cull it as fast as you can, because even though you have a lot of money in this thing, you think you can deal with it later down the road. A lot of the offspring he's going to produce that are defective, they're going to reproduce themselves, and before you know it, it compounds itself into a problem that you're not going to be able to work your way out of. So I would just say, do it quick. And I saw this a couple of years ago. Someone showed me the birds they got, and they had some defects. I can't remember what they were exactly right out of the box. And he's like, "Oh, I'll just work my way through it. They were real expensive and everything." I'm going, for me, I'd cull those things right now. Be done with it, because you're just going to produce. You're going to end up what cost you $1,000 in a trio is going to cost you more, because that trio is going to produce in a number of years a lot of birds, and you're going to have to cull all those down the road. So I would just do it right now.
Yeah, that's like I said. As soon as that thought goes through your head, I need to cull that bird, you need to do it right then and there. If it's 5 or 6 birds, you need to do it right then and there, because I was always bad to put it off, Kenny. I'd say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'd say, I'll do it next week. I don't have time. And this thing, I've had that bird a year and a half, only to cull it. And all that feed, all that time, labor, water, feeding it, gone.
It's like we were talking about a second ago, or a little while ago, is that you can't start the selection process until you've culled through them really well. And I would suggest this for anybody, no matter where you're at in the Founders Program, how your strain is progressing, is each year, you should be looking at the birds constantly as you're feeding every day. You should be looking at, but once you start putting your brood pen together, you start moving birds around, you should be culling hard all the time because, especially when you get to the time when you're starting to select and decide which brood fowl you're going to use, which part of the program you may be within the Founders Program. Yeah, start with the culling first, then select, not the other way around.
Yeah. But the way you have it written out, Kenny, the way you wrote it as far as hatch as many as you can, select the 10% of standouts, cull the rest. That's the way it needs to be done. That's close to Mother Nature as you can get right there, because that is about what happens in Mother Nature. Okay. But the thing about it is, once you get down to those lower number heads of birds and your yard is smaller numbered, you're less resistance to diseases, sicknesses. Because I promise you, you overstock your yard where you got them piled on top of each other. You don't have any room. Next thing you know, something bad's going to happen once you get them overstocked. Something's going to come along. If you don't cull them, guess what? Mother Nature will.
Yeah.
Something will happen to disease, sickness. Something will happen that will automatically cull them. Anytime anything gets overpopulated, Mother Nature will fix it to unpopulate it.
Think of it like this too. Let's say you have a lot of birds. You did a good job. You hatched a lot of offspring, and you're trying to select the best ones out of all of them. And when you cull down to your minimum viable number, I guess you could say, it exposes those good ones better. It's easier to see the good ones when you've gotten rid of all the bad ones first, because when you see all of them at one time, it kind of clouds your judgment. It kind of confuses you. It's hard to decipher who's who, what's what, which ones are the best ones. So I always say, get those bad ones out of there first. Then you can start your selection process, with the understanding that you're trying to get to the top 10%. But I wouldn't mess around with any birds that you're not going to use in the breeding program. Those got to go first.
Well, see, I wasn't the only one. Cross B said that's my problem, Frank. I put it off and off. And a lot of people does. It's not only us, Cross B. It's everybody. Because I think everybody that is a breeder, a serious breeder, they'll tell you they dread when it comes to culling. It really does. It's a I guess you could call it a nuisance. It takes time, work. Then you've got to do all that. You got to do away with them somehow. It's really a pain in the butt, but it's part of it to being a serious breeder, though.
It's an emotional thing and a physical thing, because
it is.
And then you are thinking, like maybe some other people that, God, I got all this money in this thing. I paid so much for it. I've pumped feed into it for like 2 years, and I'm just going to cull it. That's hard for some people. I get it.
Got attached. An attachment. They get attached to them.
I mean, if you turn to a pet, that's another thing. Just set it aside or whatever. But you can't make them all pets. You know what I mean?
But that pet, I went to yards to see them, and their necks would be stoved up, or they'd have a big hump on their back, and they'd say, "Oh, that's so and so. Call it the name. He's the pet. He runs around here doing that." And then you go back a year or two later, well, where's your pet chicken? I ended up killing it. I got rid of it. I culled it. I got rid of it. So they kept it that long, fed it, took care of it. And then they culled it in the end anyway, so.
Yeah. Here's one I get this question every now and then. And it's, can culling be a form of selection? So that if that's all you were doing was culling your birds, would that satisfy selection? But you got to understand that culling is highly connected to selection. You can't do one without the other. And you can't select properly until you cull first. The only method I know that you can use culling as a selection process is clan mating and spiral mating programs. That kind of a rotational program, because most of the time that's how you're improving them. That's how you're deciding who to keep and not keep, is by actually culling them and then keeping the rest. Because when it comes to spiral mating and clan mating, it's all about the numbers. It doesn't really work unless you have enough hens in each of the clans to keep it going. Okay, so it's all about the numbers. So you end up selecting through culling rather than selecting the best birds because you're trying to keep a certain amount of birds. So I'm not saying that's the only way it would work, but that's how clan mating and spiral mating works, which is where I see the problem and why I think when you're using those methods, improvement is very slow. I don't think you can actually create a family by only using a spiral or clan mating method. I think you need to do some other things. I think you can use it as a maintenance program once you have an established strain, but to actually create a strain from scratch using clan mating or spiral mating, I think it's one of the worst things you could ever do.
There's no improvement. There's
It's
really no,
slow.
it's very, very slow, if
Very
any.
slow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what you're basically doing because you're trying to keep so many birds. It is all about the numbers. So basic, you're culling, you're saying, I'm just making up a number. Let's say, and this is for some clan mating and spiral mating systems, 12 hens per clan is actually a small number. But let's say
Oh,
you have
yeah.
a bunch of birds, you're splitting them up into 3 clans, and you say, okay, I need 12 hens per clan. Well, that's what? That's 36 hens. Okay. So what are you doing? You're just trying to get rid of the worst ones so that you have the numbers. And I just don't think it's a great way to go. Like I said, the only way clan mating and spiral mating works is if you already have a really good strain, an established strain that's in really good shape and it really represents the breed and what you are looking for, then it works like a maintenance program. But
Or a good breeding program to add with it.
yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
But you're right, Kenny. If you just took off with that, you're just going to sit in limbo for years and years and years and years and never go anywhere, really. Not that you know of, anyway.
So after
But
go
you're
ahead.
feeling. I just want to say you're feeling generous today. I'll say
Why is
that. This the advice you're giving.
Oh,
You're
okay.
feeling, you're feeling generous today. I'll say.
So after saying that, this is going to confuse people. Why, if selection, if culling and selection work hand in hand, and it's selection that progresses the strain, why is culling more important than selection?
Because you're getting rid of the ones that you dare not want to breed to.
Yeah, because it's mainly in the way it's set up in the order of its importance. Because, like we talked about, you can't start your selection process until you get rid of the worst birds first. But so selection in a lot of ways is important because you're progressing the strain. But culling becomes more important than selection only because you can't start the selection process until you cull them first.
I'm going to say this one. Tawny come up with a good one there. Okay. She told Kenny and she said, Dad, I probably wouldn't know what a bad bird looked like because I'm used to seeing good birds. But, really, if you think about it, we've got to have these bad birds, okay, to really know when we've got a good bird. And we've got to have a good bird to know when we got a bad bird. So it goes hand in hand. You got to know one to know the other, really.
Yeah. They do work hand in hand. They're one and the same when you think about it. It's yeah. So but understand that it seems like when you're beginning your breeding program, and the founders program is set up this way, in that there's a lot of cleanup in the beginning, the first 3 stages. You never want to skip those first 3 stages because of that process. But so it will feel like in the beginning you're culling a lot of birds, and it's going to feel like that's never going to end. Okay. But understand that there's going to be a lot more culling in the beginning and less when you start reaching the foundation stage, when they start becoming more uniform, consistent, you've put them through the cleanup process, you're going to have a lot less culls. And you get to the point when, and I hear the members that are in the foundation stage saying the same thing, that it's getting harder to select them. And I go, that's exactly what you want. You want to get to that point when you have so many good ones, it's actually hard to select the best ones that are the top 10% or the standouts. That's a great place to be when you have a problem selecting the ones that are the best. But understand that in the beginning of the founders program, in the first few stages, there's going to be a lot of culling. There just is. But as you get going, you get into the foundation stage, a lot less culling. It'll be harder.
I told Stephen, I think it was last year, I said, it was in the fall, and I said, I haven't run into one cull yet. Can you
Really?
believe that? And he said, you're a fruitcake. There's no way. I said, I'm telling you, I haven't run into a cull yet. And you know that I go back and look at it, I don't think I did that year because what I done, if I found something wrong, I took care of it in the beginning. So when it got to the stages after I'd free range them and everything, I'd already had on my hands, went over them. I mean, I didn't have now. Did I cull some after that? Yeah, but it was going back to those. You know, they were just not as good as the standouts that I had, but there wasn't nothing wrong with them. You could, you know, somebody else, they would have made a good bird, seafowl bird or something to start with, you know. But it's good to have that though. That's a good feeling.
Well, you know, I'm not culling as much lately, only because it's not that I'm finding defects so much, is because I've got members. I've been giving birds away. You know, before I don't like selling birds. I'm not into selling birds, and I wasn't giving a lot of birds away. So I was actually, you know, I hate to say it, I was actually culling good birds. They just weren't my standouts, the ones I wanted to move the strain forward with, you know.
Yeah.
So let me see where I want to go, because we've talked a lot about some of this. Can culling be used to improve a strain? Well, anytime you cull a bird, you've improved the strain.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Yeah, that's definitely improvement. Anytime you cull one that's you know, less than what you've got, you've improved your whole yard actually.
Yeah, because the lower quality birds are the weakest link of your strain, you know. So if you can get rid of those, you're going to improve your strain.
Yeah.
Because when you think of it like that, and you're culling them first, and you're getting down to the few to select from, culling becomes it's used as a selection mechanism. But if you were to use culling as the selection mechanism, it can work, but it's just going to take longer. That's all. You do need selection to speed up the process.
Well, we've said it a million times, Kenny. Your worst bird's your weakest link. And when you've got that weakest link, that's where the chain's going to break every time. So the more culls you got, the weaker that chain is.
Yeah. Here's one I get from time to time from new members. And these particular members are new to chickens in general, too. And that is, can you breed or create a strain without culling? And I do get that question from time to time. And I always tell them, no, all good breeders must cull ruthlessly. It's a must. Even the best families, even the great breeders, they're culling. They're actually culling too.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing about it is you could take and only breed your standouts, your best birds. But why are you keeping the rest of them if you're not culling them? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
You know, that's the part of me I don't understand. If I'm not breeding a bird, then I don't need it on my place. Why am I feeding it and watering it? That's how I look at it. If it's on my yard, it has a purpose. I'm using it, because if it doesn't have a purpose and I'm not using it, it's gone.
Yeah, but you're not culling it. You're giving it away or selling it. You know,
Yeah.
To me, a bird that's defective or substandard or sick is actually a true cull. But you should be selecting the top percent, and then your standouts come from that. But I always tell them, even the best breeders in the world, they're culling. So understand that's just a function of breeding, you know. And breeding, we say it all the time, is that breeding's a balancing act. So even when you think you got them perfect, or you think you got them as good as you can, you're going to realize that there's a balancing act where every year you went from exaggerating the traits to getting to the point where you want them, and then it's a matter of just keeping them there by selecting. One year they're going to be here, next year they're going to be here, and you just keep selecting them back and forth, trying to keep them where you want them. It never ends.
I had 4 birds that was culls on my place that I kept there for a little over a year. And that was when we was going to thinking about doing that seminar, and I was going to use them for examples. I got one of like each defect that we was going to use for examples. And as soon as Kenny told me, excuse me, COVID come out and he said, well, we're not going to be able to do it, I went straight that day and culled those 4 birds and got them off my yard.
Yeah. You know, this next question is what made me think about doing a show on culling. It was Frank and I, after a show, will talk for a while. Okay. And we were talking about sometimes you can select too early, and sometimes you need to like wait till the birds mature a bit before you start your selection process or your culling process, because sometimes you can get rid of a lot of good birds because you didn't really understand the growth and development of that bird. And when you've had a family for so long, like Frank and I have had, when you see a stag that doesn't look like, some people say, well, he has this and has that. Maybe his back isn't as wide as it should be, or his tail may be starting to just barely go over the perpendicular where it's going to start become squirrel tail. We know our stags well enough to know that that's going to fix itself as it goes, that they're going to mature, fill out, the backs are going to broaden as they get older, the tails are going to start dropping down, because we know our family, so sometimes it's good, like when you have a new family, to hold on to some birds long enough to see how well they develop. If it's not a major defect, then sometimes hold on to those birds to see where you're at. Then you know better down the road on which to hold on to or which ones to get rid of. And
Good
you'll
point.
little by little, you'll learn your strain. It's like they say, you learn your breed by breeding them. You learn your strain by breeding them, by creating them. Okay. And so you only get to know them by breeding them and selecting them and seeing how they develop as they go. So I guess what I'm trying to say is be careful about judging them, selecting them, and culling them too early in the process. Get rid of the obvious defects, but if they're borderline, you kind of need to hold on to it for a while just to see where they go. So it's important not to judge them too early.
Yeah, I forgot we was talking about that too,
That's what
Kenny.
made me decide to do this
Yeah,
this show.
and what got it started? I was telling Kenny, I said, with my stags, and always a stag's tail will be a little bit higher than it is when he's a cock. Well, anybody that's seen pictures of my birds, I kind of go a little bit crazy with the tail. I do a big full tail, sometimes a little bit too full, but I like that. That's one thing that I breed for. And when they get as cocks, when they get the bigger tails in, that tail will sit down quite a ways. But as a stag, they would be borderline squirrel tail. But like Kenny said, I know that will happen. Now, if it's way past that and it's in the back of his head, that's obvious. Go on and take care of him right then and there. But knowing your fowl will help you select and pick the culls out more than anything in this world.
It's like mine. I see what Frank's saying about the tail coming up a little too high sometimes, because my stags kind of do that too. And Nancy will go, "Isn't he squirrel tail?" I go, "No, he's a stag. He's fine. Don't worry about it." She goes, "It looks cool, squirrel tail to me. You sure it's not crossing the line?" It'll be fine. It'll be fine, because I know my stags.
I could see her doing that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She gets me, and she'll come out 2 weeks later and say the same thing. Nancy, I just told you 2 weeks ago. That's fine. It's gonna be good. Okay, I think you should call that one. I go, okay, Nancy. But the one I see in my birds is the backs are not as broad as stags. They're not as broad and flat
That's me.
as they would be when they get older. When they mature, their backs really come into form when they reach 2 years old. When they're 1 year old, they look narrow. They don't look right. But I know my birds.
That's lanky.
Yeah. So I know
They're
that.
lanky.
Yeah. And I also know that if they look short station when they're young, they're going to be really short when they get old. So
Very
station
short.
is a big deal for me too. This is so funny. And where's the other one? Because there's one that goes with it. Here's another tip of the day. This is Derek, by the way. He says, here's another tip of the day. Keep the wife and kids off the yard, because you'll end up keeping things for them because they like them, or they'll name them, or like the color.
And they like the color.
Let me read that
that's
again.
true.
Let me read this again, because I look at the show as the raw footage for my podcast. So anytime I repeat something, because I know I'm gonna have to edit and fix it. So he says, keep the wife and kids off the yard, because you'll end up keeping things for them because they like them, or then they'll name them, or like the color. So that's true. There was some birds that Nancy liked, Tawny liked, that I was holding on to, or they made me hold on to, that I wish I could have culled and got rid of before they saw them. But here's another one that goes with it. This is so funny. Rob says, having a wife that sees the feed bill keeps me culling. So sometimes you got to get your wife involved on the cost of what it costs to keep those birds, just because they look pretty, so that's good.
And they've got it figured out. They've been there, done that, that's so true. Me and Amanda had to have a long conversation over that right there. as far as how it was going to go be with the birds. But she's on board now. I had a hard time with her before, but she's on board now. Yeah, I started that.
Okay.
That was a good one right there. Jason said, Frank, if a cock lets his tail lean to one side, a hair, but will also hold it straight, would you call it right tail? And yes, I would call it right tail. If that tail moves anything from the center from day to day, don't take a chance on it. Do not take a chance on it. I run into this. It's like a broken record. I had one cock that was done just like you explained, Jason, and I bred him. The next following year, had beautiful stags. Their tails was perfect. No problem. The next following year, had maybe one or two. Time I got to the third or fourth year with them, every one of them had dry tail. It just destroyed that whole line. So anytime I've got a question with that tail being off-centered, I don't take a chance on it.
Think of it like this. One of the things that causes right tail is a weak coccyx. Okay.
Mhm.
So what happens is the tail just kind of flops all over the place. Sometimes it's just a little, just kind of moves. You can just kind of see it falling, and then he brings up and it's kind of falling. As he gets older, that's going to get worse and worse.
It
And
does.
like Frank says, you breed that, you're going to start seeing that through the offspring. So you want a nice strong tail. And one of the things you want to do is pick up the bird, kind of face the bird to you, and just kind of move him like move him this way towards you, and then move him back like that away from you, and then kind of turn him like this, turn him like that. If he doesn't have full control of that tail, then you need to call him. Okay.
Yeah, that's his rudder. That's his rudder. And if that rudder's not straight, he's not going to be centered. So it needs to be just like Kenny said, it needs to be as straight as it can. Because now some of those cocks are tricky because you go out one day and it'll be all nice and straight. He's packing it good. You got the next day and he's sitting there relaxing. It's kind of laid over to the side.
Yeah.
Be careful of those. Stay away from them.
It's not just that it's not straight, it's the weakness of the tail.
Weakness.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it
could be disease.
It could be disease.
It could
gumbo
be a
is
disease.
a good cause of that. It could be
Yes.
disease. It could be genetic. It could be habit. But whenever we're dealing with a trait that could be, and most likely is genetic, whether it was created by the environment or not, you just don't know. And you won't
That's
know,
true.
like Frank said, for a couple generations, because a lot of the weaknesses are hidden by its mate. And so the next offspring look good, like Frank said, and then you breed those, and then all of a sudden they're all, have
Yeah.
it showing right tail. So those kind of things sneak up on you. So anytime you see something that could be genetic, even though you think it's environmental, you should get rid of it.
Yeah, it could have been something, Jason, as common as maybe other chicks picked him when they was young in the pen. They could have damaged it by pecking him or something. Like Kenny said, it could be environmental, but I promise you don't want to take a chance on that. You do not want to go down that road whatsoever.
And he's asking right here, Jason's saying, can you breed past it? When we're talking about monogenic traits, qualitative traits, a trait that's basically one gene, represents one gene, one trait, you should cull it right away. And Rytel is one of those. The only traits I know that you can breed past over time, if you select properly, would be traits that are polygenic, multi-gene traits, quantitative, measurable, that kind of thing. Then
Squirrel
tail's one,
crooked
bone's
keel.
another. Yeah, those are good signs. Station, conformation of body, those can be worked through. But anytime you're not selecting properly or selecting to the highest intensity or the proper intensity, you're always moving in the wrong direction. And the key is understanding both the cock and the hen when you do your selection, because if you got one wrong, you're just not going to get there, and it's going to make things worse. So you've got to really understand what to select for, what the cock should look like, and the hens, because it requires, when we're talking about polygenic traits, it requires both of them to be as good as they can be. And then anytime you say, okay, well, I'll breed this really bad bird to this great hen, then and you keep doing that, thinking that the other mate's always going to compensate. You can't do that. You always have to breed to the birds of the best. And here's the other thing too, and tail's a good example of this. Let's say I'm dealing with squirrel tail, Okay. And I think that I'm going to fix it by breeding it to a low tail. So you've got two faults, two defects, thinking it's going to bring it to the center. And it doesn't work like that because they're two separate traits, actually. They work as two separate traits. So when you breed a squirrel tail and a low tail, you don't get the proper tail. You get a bunch of offspring with both. Okay. So you always have to work the hen and the cock, the ones with the that are the closest to the proper tail. And little by little, if you keep doing that, you're going to get there. But you can't breed to extremes thinking you're going to get there. It won't work.
That will actually get you in more trouble than anything by doing that. It really would. But, Kenny explained it to the T for you, Jason. Really, if it was squirrel tail we was talking about, I'd say, yeah, no problem. If it was crooked keel, crooked breastbone, yeah, get past that. But when it comes to right tail, stay away from it. Don't even go down that road. I promise you, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That can be devastating. That can be real. That actually what it is, it's a nightmare and one of the biggest headaches you'll ever have.
If you look at squirrel tail, that's a fault. Okay. Now, if you look at low tail, it's a fault in that it doesn't represent its breed, because we get the low tail a lot of times because we, in our birds, the American games is Oriental blood, like a seal. So that kind of thing wants to pop up from time to time. So we have to breed away from it as much as possible, because that tail is just going to get lower and lower because of the genome, the genes that have been acquired over time, because a lot of different breeds like Irish blood, Old English, Spanish, a seal. There's a lot of bloodlines that were involved in creating American games, and it's our job as breeders to work with a standard that all brings us to the same end. As a bird that has a certain conformation of body, type, color, also. Those are all important. But whenever we're not paying attention to station or actually conformation of body and type, and we're just breeding them to breed them, we're getting further and further away. It's destroying the breed. Eventually, I can guarantee you, eventually there's going to come a time when you don't want those birds anymore, and you're going to get away from them. And it's going to be to a point when you're going to have to get rid of all of them and start over. So, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Now, this one right here, he said, it would be nice if we had a place to find answers about which defects we could be worked out and which should be culled immediately. Cough, cough. I wonder where does a place like that exist, Kenny?
Where is it?
It's
Maybe Robbie can tell us where it is. Okay.
Yeah, Robbie. Yeah. Do you know such a place?
Yeah.
I may. I don't know. I've got one in mind.
He should have put the answer in his question. But yeah, the Breeders' Academy, we cover a lot of different animals, different types of animals, mostly chickens. We have, I do center everything around game fowl, because American games, especially because that's what I raise. That's what Frank raises. But we have domestic chickens of all types in there. We have, cattle, horses, pigs, sheep, bees,
plants.
Well, plants.
Yeah.
I can't think of any. I don't know. We have everything. I should keep a list in front of me. Yeah. Dogs,
anything you can think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fish. I don't know if you mentioned fish.
Yeah. Fish.
Yeah. So the methods work for all breeds. That's the one that gets me all the time is, anything that's for other breeds too isn't meant for game fowl. And then domestic chickens go, well, if it's for game fowl, it's not for them. It's this particular website's for everybody, but because I raise American games, that's what I center. I use as my example that's what I center everything around. But it works for everything.
The proof's in there. The members are proof that it works for everything.
Yeah. Let's see. So does culling have a place when breeding for disease resistance? And I would say yes. Breeding for disease resistance requires a lot of culling. I mean, you cannot build a family that's resistant to disease unless you are culling. So I would suggest that anytime you see a sick bird, is to cull them as fast as you can. Only breed to the healthy birds, because anything that was sick or is sick is a weak link to your family. And over time, you'll get to a point when you won't see any sick birds, but it also doesn't work unless you keep a closed yard. And if you're not willing to do that, you're just never going to get there.
Well, look at it this way. As the great Tony Seville always said, if it wants to die, I'm going to help it. And I will every time. I will not help him survive, but I'll sure help him pass on to the other side.
I'm always telling people when he came over to my farm, he saw all that medication on my shelf. And well, first he saw some sick chickens. I go, yeah, I got it handled. I got the medication. I got it all taken care of. I thought I was good to go. And he goes, I would cull that bird. I would cull all these birds that are sick. And I go, and I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And he just said, you cannot medicate your way to out of a problem. He said, you can't medicate your way out of a problem, that you need to cull the sick and just breed to the ones that are healthy. And he goes, let me see what kind of medications you have. And I was so proud. I took him in there. I was going to show him I had everything handled. I knew what I was doing. I was on top of everything. And he just started throwing them into the trash can, breaking them as they were going. I'm like, oh my God.
All that money.
Yeah, I'm going to have to buy all those things again and everything. But he says, Uncle Tony just did you a favor. Start culling those sick ones, breed to the healthy ones, and in time you'll thank me. And it was tough because it took me about 5 or 6 years to get to a point when I didn't see any sick chickens. But I did notice every year it got better and better, and I had less and less sick chickens. And it took me a couple of years to feel like I was doing the right thing, actually,
Yeah, but you was practicing good biosecurity too, though, Kenny.
Oh, yeah.
You wasn't bringing in outside chickens.
No. Well, at first I did everything wrong like everybody else. I brought chickens. Yeah. I mean, I had 15 different lines at that time, different strains or breeds.
Like everybody else.
Because I thought I wanted everything, and I got hounded about that too. And then I was letting people on my yard all the time, and I was going on to other people's yards. So, it's no wonder that I had sick chickens. But once I started practicing good biosecurity, started selecting for disease resistance, everything got better. Mm-hmm.
That's the only way that you can have disease resistance, because if you keep bringing it in, you're never going to get it to where they're resistant. If you keep bringing diseases in, it's never going to happen. And closed yard, it will happen.
Yeah. Even if you medicate them, and you got to the point they're not symptomatic, they're chronic. Eventually they're going to get sick again. I mean, I saw this one video where they were every so often they were medicating their birds, either getting them all, filling up this big old bucket full of antibiotics and feeding, giving all their birds antibiotics to prepare for bad weather coming, or they were like they call it a copper sulfate program, a copper sulfate program. And I'm like, that's a chemical that's really tough on the chickens. I talk to Dr. Gallardo all the time, and he calls it the nuclear bomb. There's ways of fixing things, and then you got your nuclear bomb. And he goes, whenever you're pumping chemicals in them like that, it causes more harm than good. Those chemicals are harsh for the inside of that bird, especially copper sulfate. It wasn't meant for chickens. So they're not only just giving it to them now and then, fixing problems that are arising, they're doing it as a program for coccidiosis and all kinds of stuff. And I just think that's a terrible thing to do.
Now, any of the bag feeds you buy nowadays has got copper sulfate in it, but the levels of it is minute. If you look at the tag and the ingredients, it'll always say copper sulfate, but it is just, they use it for a acidifier. It's just a small minute. They're mixing it within, I'm talking strong enough to where if you put it in a metal bucket, that bucket would be gone in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Beat it up.
Oh yeah.
So
you never want to give
what's
copper
that
sulfate in metal.
Yeah. So if it's going to do that to a bucket, what's it going to do to the organs and the kidneys and the liver, all that? What's it going to do to it? In that big a dose. But he's right as far as that being a nuclear bomb. It would be. It would be, because when they put it in feed, it's just a very minute amount, just a little amount.
To understand that, go check out. I'm not sure if it's on. I have to check it out. I'm not sure if it's on YouTube, because a lot of our episodes are archived on the website, so you have to look. But check to see if the internal parasites episode is on YouTube and the antibiotics use.
That's a good one.
Those 2 episodes will really open your eyes about medicating and whether you should medicate or not. Because I think people are over medicating, and I don't think they should be medicating or giving worms at all.
Well, Dr. Gallardo, he gives good reasons why you should not medicate, why you shouldn't give antibiotics. And once you hear those, it's an eye opener. I'm telling you, it will open your eyes up to not using medications because, I've said this before. The side effects from a lot of these drugs, especially antibiotics, can be more severe than the disease that you're trying to overcome. And there's ways around. If you must medicate a chicken, there's other ways by antibiotics. We're not allowed antibiotics in the broilers and the chickens that we eat nowadays. So how do you think, if they get sickness in there, how do you think they're they're taking care of that? There's other ways to take care of your chickens besides using antibiotics all the time.
I was talking to one of my members the other day, and he said something that was kind of neat, and that is, he was talking about how you and I are very knowledgeable about what we do, and he's really enjoying the Breeders' Academy, and he's learning a lot from it. It's making a big difference in his strain. But he said what he liked about it too was our connections. We don't just have people who think they know something.
Yeah.
We have experts. These people, like Dr. Gallardo, he's not just he doesn't just know about chicken health and diseases. He's a poultry veterinarian. Okay,
He's an authority.
So yeah,
He's an authority.
I surround myself not with people who think they know what they're talking about. I surround myself with people who live this, who are experts in their fields. Okay, that do this for a living, are professionals. I don't just bring someone on to give their theories or anything. I want to know
Opinions.
Yeah, I don't want that. I want to know exactly what's going on. So he really gives really good information, really explains what it's all about, how it works, why it works. I just love the way he delivers it, the information he gives it and how he gives it.
He's not,
it gives everybody a lot of authority,
he's not only a veterinarian, avian doctor, okay, he's also a professor, a teacher, educator.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, what more could you ask for? If you want the facts on something, Dr. Gallardo is the person that's going to be able to give you the 100% facts.
That's why I get this all the time, and it's always the same answer is, why don't you get this breeder on? Why don't you get that breeder on? Why don't you talk to this guy, that guy? How come you don't get these big name breeders on there? And believe me, I've talked to a lot of these guys. Okay. And
there's
after
a reason.
Conversation, an hour or two of talking with them, I realize they don't have nothing to teach. They don't know anything. They're just breeding best of the best. Why they think best of the best is the best is the right approach, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Maybe because they just don't know better. If they understood how the information in the Breeders' Academy, understand how the Founders Program's laid out, they would probably rethink that. Multipliers in that they're always adding new blood and crossing everything all the time. I guess that would be best of the best, but that's maybe the problem too, is they're not really interested in creating a strain, and they're
not breeding.
Yeah,
that to me, that's not breeding. That's just raising chickens. You're multiplying chickens. You're making more of what you got, pretty much.
Yeah. Derek says, "Preach it, Kenny."
Soapbox time, guys.
My soapbox, yeah, and I really go off. I get emotional when I talk about some of this stuff. It just, I don't know why. Sometimes I wonder, why do I care? Why do I give a crap? Let these people do what they want. Because I was thinking about Frank and I were talking about a while back that, maybe these guys that are promoting this stuff, I don't need to be the one that knocks them down. Just the fact that we're giving out really good information, people are going to get a clue. They're going to compare the information between them and us, and they're going to see the best way they're going to understand which way they should go. I don't need to really, I guess it's some things like medicating baby chicks. I mean, that just gets me or medicating or worming baby chicks. Sometimes I just can't keep my mouth shut about things like that.
I told Kenny, I said, we've had haters in the past. Me and Kenny has. Okay. But one thing they didn't say, that we were wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
They can say what they want to say, but they can't tell us that we're wrong, because we can me and Kenny both, Dr. Gallardo, everybody that comes on this show that we have on the show can back up scientifically reasons of what we're saying, and it can be backed up. So a lot of people can't say that. A lot of people can't say that.
Yeah. I know I can come off very arrogant and full of myself. I get that. I hear it all the time. But it's not that. It's just that I just really know my topic really well, and I don't mess around when I deliver it or when I'm teaching it. I just say it how it is and how it comes into my mind. That's how it comes out of my mouth. And
Well,
I'm just
Kenny, here's the thing.
I'm not very diplomatic, I guess you could say. I know the information I want you to learn, and that's what I give you.
People think that you're coming off arrogant because you don't sugarcoat it to make them your friend. You tell them what they need to hear. That's the big difference. A lot of people, you tell them what they don't want to hear, they get pissed, they get mad, they get angry. But that's the way I look at it. That's the difference between the members of the Breeders' Academy and the people elsewhere, because they want to learn. They want to learn the right way. They're interested. They want to hear what you've got to say and what you teach, but you tell them the truth. They're thankful for it. They don't get mad. They don't get angry. They don't hold their breath and kick their feet and get mad.
I know I can come off intimidating. I hear that one too a lot, but I think most of them who've done coaching calls with me, they realize
they know,
I'm not as, I come off hard here sometimes because I get so emotional, but I'm actually a lot easier to get along than you would ever think. Steve says, if you're not a member, you're missing so much, no doubt. And then Derek says, one reason I'm a member is that you guys care. And I really appreciate that, And then Steve over here says, some call it confidence.
Hey, hold on a minute.
What?
There we go.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There we go.
I wore my Star Wars shirt today because it's Star Wars Day. So
yeah, I love that shirt you had on in the Breeders' show there other night, Tuesday night. The Darwin shirt. I like that.
Which one was I wearing?
The Darwin with the stars on it, the long sleeve.
Yeah, what did it say?
Darwin. Shoot, you asked me too fast.
Now I got so many of them now. I forgot what it was called.
Darwin said, or something like that.
Oh my God, I can't remember what it is.
It was a nice shirt. It was another Darwin shirt. He's got so many Darwin shirts, it's hard to keep up with them.
Robbie says, that's what people are telling you, Kenny. They don't like people who know what they're talking about. Don't mind them, Well, and I understand that, because when you come off as, oh yeah, that's what it was, Derek.
Let's go, Darwin.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I thought it was I told him, I said,
know that. Yeah.
I come on and I sent it and I was like, oh crap, Kenny's got a politics shirt on. I thought it was saying something else because he turned sideways and he turned around. I was like, oh shoot.
Was I wearing that at the Masters class video? I think I was. Yeah. Okay.
That was it. But when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, he's got one of those shirts on. And then he turned around, I'd see what it was, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, Nancy, I let everybody know that in the beginning of the show that it's Peter's birthday as well. He's born on the 4th of May. The 4th be with you,
Be with you.
So
how old was he, Kenny?
Oh, I think he's 6.
6 years old.
I think he's 6 years old,
Long life ahead of that young person.
But we're almost done with this. I was gonna just bypass some of this, but I do want to cover it. Frank, culls are expensive. We talked about that a second ago. Why hold on to birds that are just costing you money, and other than the fact you may not know what to cull, or you don't know that they're cull, but if you know they're cull, get rid of them, because like Frank said, the feed bill is getting more and more expensive all the time, and we should be taking care of that right away.
It seems like every time I go to the feed store anymore, which I have to buy enough feed to do 4 or 5 different people, because I make up enough feed for some friends too. But it's $3,000 or $4,000 every time I go, Kenny, because where I make my own pellets and everything, I've got to buy a couple ton of feed just to be able to make what I want to make. So really, if I didn't have these other guys that were using the feed with me, I'd never be able to use that amount of feed. It's just the amount of feed you got to buy to do your own. And then if you buy it in these stores, you get junk feed. If you're not making your own feed, you're just getting stuff that your birds can't survive on, and it just keeps getting more expensive. So yeah, the thing about it is, this is the way I look at it anymore. If I don't have a reason for keeping that bird, it needs to be culled or put on another yard if he's not defective or anything wrong with him, but he doesn't need to be on that yard. If he doesn't have a purpose on my yard, he needs to be gone.
Yeah, that's how I look at it exactly. If that bird doesn't have a purpose, or I'm not going to use him as breeding down the road. If every Nancy will tell you, I say it all the time. Every bird on my farm has to have a purpose. I will not hold on to a bird that doesn't. Okay. So, but just so you know, we're talking about feed. Frank and I are getting ready to do an episode. We're working out the outline right now on how to create your feed by the ingredients that you're able to get at your local feed store, because not everybody can go and buy a ton or 2,000 pounds of feed, because you only have so many chickens and it's expensive. And sometimes you don't know how to put together a lot of the feeding formulas that some of these feed manufacturers, what do they call them?
Meals.
Meals.
The
Yeah.
feed mill.
Have, or just other formulas that other people created who don't know how to create a formula in the first place. I've seen some of these, it's just, they just look pretty. So we're going to put together a show that's going to show you how to go to your local feed store, what bags to buy, how to mix it, and what proportions to mix, why use this grain over this grain, why to use this pellet over that pellet, what to use, what not to use, what to stay away from, that kind of thing. So we're working on that right now, because we're gonna cover nutrition. Frank's got a really good handle on nutrition. He's learned a lot from the classes he's taken. He's working on his doctorate on poultry science, which I appreciate, because he's helping me out a lot too. And although I know a little bit about feed, nothing near what Frank knows. And Frank's been enlightening me daily about feed. So I can't wait to dig into that. That'll be fun.
I'm going to end up burning him out on nutrition.
Yeah, there was a time I didn't want to talk about nutrition ever again, but
Yeah.
I think it's time.
Well, we thought about, whether to do it or not. And good old Nancy stepped in there, and explained the reasons that we needed to do it. So, and she made good sense too, because, we go back and look, Kenny, genetics, nutrition, and environment. So it's one of the key players. So yeah, we need to cover it.
Joe, yeah, it's temporarily closed right now. What I would suggest you do is join my newsletter, and it'll show you how to get in and when to get in. So go to www.breedersacademy.com, join the newsletter, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
You worried me there for a minute. I thought I was going to have to clear my weekly schedule again.
Yeah, like Robbie says, subscribe to the newsletter, Joe. There's a lot there for the meantime. Yeah. There's a lot more than you think there is. And
special offers.
There's a lot of special offers, a lot of new opportunities for new subscribers. Make sure you do that, and I'll be able to help you, and you'll know when to join. You'll be glad you did. So I think one of the last ones I want to talk about, Frank, and we can wrap this up because we're right at 2 hours, is beware of buying other breeders' culls, because I really think, I know it sounds high as far as percentage. I would say 99% of the birds that are shipped to these buyers are culls, one way or another, whether that breeder knows it or not.
A lot of them knows it. Some of them, I would say it don't. But going back a while ago, you said, that you get worked up when it comes to, the peddler scenario, this and that. Yeah. And I know why that is, Kenny. I know why that does that to you. Because with Kenny gets to see a lot of people seed and breed fowl, okay? They send him pictures. They'll pay $2,000 for a trio. And then they say, okay, Kenny, I want you to take a look at it, see what you think about it. So Kenny gets to see a lot of these birds that ship to these people. And he's seen a lot of people be taken advantage of. And over a period of time, that grows on you when you see that level of just pure out taking advantage of somebody. And I can see that, it bothers me too, because especially when you're seeing it every day for your own eyes. He sees the type of birds these people's getting. And that's a lot of the reason he says If you can't go pick it out, don't have it shipped to you. Don't let them pick the birds for you. Pick your birds, learn the correct way through the Breeders' Academy, and then go pick your own birds. But that's the reason I think, am I right, Kenny?
Yeah.
Is that a lot of it?
You wouldn't believe how hard it is for me when I know I've got to be the bearer of bad news. Most of the time they order these things and they pull them out of the box. It's almost it's amazing what they're sending these people. It's like, oh my God, these guys are supposed to know what they're doing. They're supposed to be great breeders. This is what they sent you. Sometimes they're in really bad shape and sometimes they're just wrong. They got the wrong conformation. They got the wrong everything. You know what I mean? They're squirrel tailed, they're rye tail. There's all kinds of problems. And then they call back the breeder and he says, don't worry, they have what it takes. They come from really good stock. Trust me, they're what you want. So I just I hate it because I'm the one that has to be the bearer of bad news, and I don't like it. You know what I mean? I don't like telling the people that they spent all that money for nothing. And then when they call the breeder to complain or get their money back, the breeder spends that time talking them into why they are good birds. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And going after Kenny.
Yeah.
Going after Kenny.
No. The top, not the top, but the more popular breeders, the bigger breeders, they all hate me because I make them look bad. I make them all look bad.
Yep.
I'm their worst enemy. I ruined their business. I've had them call me and tell me that. Okay. So
that's right. I said they're not a fan of you at all.
No. And I don't care. I don't care not one little bit, I'm not there to be their friend,
Yeah.
So
Joe, Joe, regardless of where you're at, you could join, man. He's in Australia. Joe is.
Yeah.
So actually, we've got a lot of members from Australia.
Oh yeah, we do. Mm-hmm.
Quite a few of them. Really do.
Yeah. So a lot of things are going to come out of that box. Like I said, beware of culls. Don't buy from the mill if you can possibly help it. Chances are you're going to get birds that are either cross or mongrels. And if they're pure, they're not related. They're never, think about it, unless you know them really well and they're friends of yours, or really close, and maybe even family, they're not going to give you birds or you're going to be able to replicate their family. They're just not going to do that. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, Frank will, I will, because I'm not in that business. I love sharing my birds. I don't care who gets my birds. And the truth is even if those breeders understood that most of the people buying their birds because they don't understand the breeding process as it is, they're probably not going to be able to replicate their birds anyways because they don't know what they're doing. A lot of people who are breeding birds or buying birds are new at this and they don't know what they're doing. They're probably going to go and get them and then add new blood to their fowl because that's what everybody says they're doing. I was hearing the other day, there's another breeder out there who says, oh yeah, I'm familiar with Kenny's birds. I've seen those birds before. When you get them, make sure you put this in them, put that in them. Make sure you get some of this, some of that. I'm like, oh my God, that's always their first approach. They have no idea what they're talking about. You just breed them like I tell you to. Learn the process inside the Breeders' Academy. You're going to do great. You know what I mean? Well, my birds, your birds, anybody's birds.
I want to add something to that too. What you got to realize, a lot of these bigger factory hatching peddlers, they got their birds from everybody under the sun. They've got 13 or 14 different breeds, and they're constantly buying birds to bring in on their place. They don't have a family that they just keep going. What Kenny said, they're adding blood to the blood that they got, and then they're constantly bringing birds in from other breeders to sell. It's not something that they keep going. It's just birds they buy to breed to resell. That's 90% or probably 99% of the time is what each one of them is doing.
I would say most of them don't have strains themselves. When you talk about how they breed them and how they create them, they started from crosses. They're still crossing them. They're still adding new blood, and they don't understand the breeding process either. And there's a whole talk in the chat room on everybody trying to get Nancy back on the show so that she can give us hell. They don't care about us. They just care about Nancy. Nancy keeps me and Kenny on track.
because without Nancy, the show goes awry because me and Kenny goes plumb off the outline and talk about everything on the sun. So Nancy keeps us in line and asks us the tough questions.
And the last one is so what about selling your culls? You know, and to me, your reputation is the only thing you have. You know what I mean? And when you sell those culls because you want to get some money from them, or some people go, hey, I'm okay just to get your culls. They want your culls. That's like we talked about earlier. It's going to come back to bite you because those birds are going to reproduce whatever defect they may have. Okay. Other people who may know what that is going to look at them, and then they're going to hound you about it. And then they're going to, you know, discredit me about it. So I would never let bird that doesn't represent what I think is a good bird off my farm, whether it's got a defect, whether it's sick or substandard. I only want good birds leaving my farm, you know.
I've had people offer to buy them, said, you know, don't kill them, you know, don't cull them. I'll take every one that you've got. Don't cull them. You know, I'll pay you $100 a piece for them. You know, I learned like I said earlier, you know, I learned my lesson on that. So that'll never be again, ever.
Yeah. So, you know, I hope you guys learned something from this. I enjoy this kind of stuff, and I hope you make culling a big part of your breeding program. You know, the quality and success of your strain depends on your ability and your willingness to cull hard and often. So make it part of your breeding program. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah. What episode was the one Mother Nature with Tony, Kenny?
Oh man, it's 50 or 60. It might be 60. I'm not sure.
Find that episode, guys, and you'll see what we're talking about as far as culling like Mother Nature. That's one of the greatest episodes, Kenny. You know, he's got some good episodes on there, but that was one of my favorite. Now the sound's not that great on it, but like Kenny said, the information is worth putting up with the sound with. I promise you. So check it out.
It's good enough because once you listen to it for a while, you don't really notice how bad it is.
Yeah. You get used to it after you listen to probably about the first 5-6 minutes of it. You're okay with it.
But I used to go and visit Tony a lot, and we would sit after feeding his chickens and everything. We'd go sit on the porch and just talk chickens. We'd pull out the wine or sodas, whatever it was, and, you know, sit out there in the dark and just talk chickens to the point when Nancy be calling, hey, you coming home soon? You know, and that kind of thing. And so you could hear like his waterfall in the background, and yeah, it just sounds like we're sitting on his porch talking about chickens. It's a great
having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
It really takes me back.
You got the members check that episode out. I promise you won't regret it. It opened my eyes as a breeder. It really did.
Yeah. So you know, we were talking about with some of you in the chat about joining the newsletter. Make sure you do that. Go to www.breedersacademy.com. It's called the Breeders Bulletin, which is our version of the newsletter. You're going to get a lot of great bonus material, free tips, free ebooks, such as the how to select the proper brood fowl, 5 steps to purifying the bloodline, and a whole bunch more. You're also going to get notification of the announcements. Like one of you guys wanted to learn about the Breeders Academy and when to join, you'll learn that as well. And we're going to provide a lot of new opportunities for our new subscribers. So, you know what? Let me get rid of this. Okay. Anything you want to say before we wrap it up, Frank?
No, other than Cross B agrees with me. He says it's a great episode. He listened to it 4 times already. So
which one?
Guys, check it out. I'm telling you.
Oh, the
one with Tony.
Yeah.
So check it out, guys. It's really good.
And for my members, make sure you check out the latest Masters Class video. I think you're going to enjoy it. Frank and I are going to record the next one this coming Tuesday. I want to thank Frank for joining me. We're having a great time with this, and I want to thank my audience for participating. And I say it all the time, your comments and your questions really shape the show. And it wouldn't be fun if we're just, I don't know, I would say that, but Frank and I talk together all the time, so I think these are pretty easy for us. And
I just love to see the members in there chatting. Me and Kenny was in the the green room getting ready to come in, and I was looking at the chats, and man, they was already going up a storm. So that just does my heart good to
I
see.
didn't even punch
talking with
into
each
the
other.
yeah, I didn't even punch into the comments, and I was watching the number just double. I'm like, wow, they're busy.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because I don't even look at the comments until we get going.
Yeah, they was having fun in there. That's what it's all about. That does my heart good to see them interacting with each other. It does.
Was it last week that I said these guys aren't even paying attention to us? That we're like
Yeah.
doing this for nothing.
Oh, they was having a
Had
blast.
their
They
own
was having
show
a
going on
blast.
in the chat
You
room.
know, but it was the members. Me and Kenny said, it's the members. They're like, I already know that stuff. I ain't gonna listen to that stuff. I know the answers to everything anyway.
Yeah, it's all been in the Breeders' Academy. We've talked about
That's
it
right.
a million times. So if you really want to learn, I mean, we teach something. I think the information that we're providing in the newsletter, this live show, it's good. I think we're putting out some really good stuff. But if you really want to learn to take your knowledge of breeding to the next level, not only the Breeders' Academy, not only the Founders Program, but the Masters Class videos, we're really putting out a lot of really good information. So, okay, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
See you guys.